This is a product review for Bob the Punching Dummy. Bob stands for Body Opponent Bag, and it's made by Century Martial Arts. Full disclosure, I paid full price for Bob. I'm not sponsored in any way, so this is my honest opinion. I provided a link on this page for where you can buy him, and if you use my link, I get a small commission, but you pay nothing extra. First, cost. Let's get this out of the way. Bob is pretty expensive. This is the XL version, and it sells for about $400. What makes it the XL version is that it's got a lower section from about the belly button to the groin, and that allows you to do knees and low kicks. While I like using it for that, I don't use it for that often. And you can buy the Bob regular version for about $300, and it doesn't come with that lower section. So I would say, unless you're planning to use a lot of knees on it, I would just go with the regular version. The reason I don't use it that much for low kicks and knees is because it's got a hard plastic base, and it's easy to miss and hit your knee on something hard. So it's not the best for that. I should also point out that Bob does not come with this gi, obviously, and he does not come with arms. These arms are called the Bob Jacket, and you could buy it separately for about $150, which again is a lot of money. I actually really like having arms because I like being able to put some clothes on him so I can grab it. I always know where the arms are. It makes it much more realistic for grappling. But again, if you're just starting out, you probably don't need it. I would just go with the base model for $300. I put this gi on him because it makes it more realistic for a real fight. There's always going to be a time to grab somebody, whether it's grabbing his elbow or his sleeve or his collar. I just like having it on, but you don't really need that either. Let's talk about durability. Bob in general is pretty durable. It's this soft rubber and it's got foam inside. This is my second Bob. My first one lasted about 5 years. I worked out on it a lot. I really beat the crap out of it. And eventually it developed some tears. There was a tear under the nose. And so whenever I'd hit him in the face, this foam snot would come out, which was kind of a nice effect. And then his neck got severed. I don't know how. And so his head kept falling off. I taped the whole thing up with duct tape for a while and I was using it, but eventually I just needed to get something new. I would say that if you work out hard on Bob consistently, he should last you about 5 years. It's pretty good for something like this to last that long, but if you really want something to last forever, then you've really got to get a traditional leather heavy bag. Those things last almost decades. The other thing I would say is that you've got to take care of it. I wouldn't leave it outside. You don't want it to get, rained on. You don't want it to have dust and garbage outside. You don't want it to bake in the sun. And I wouldn't use any sticks on it or weapons or even practice knives. You'll cut it up, you'll mess it up and it won't work. So I use padded gloves usually and I take care of it. And I feel like if I work out on it pretty hard, it'll last about 5 years. Let's talk about movement. Does this thing move around? It does a little bit. So it's got an empty plastic base and you could fill it with water or sand or both. I fill it with as much as humanly possible. I went to the hardware store, I bought these 50-pound bags of sand. I'd recommend getting really dry sand because if it's damp at all, it'll be very difficult to pour into the unit. So I got dry sand, I got a funnel, and I just put, I would say five bags of 50-pound sand into it. So that was 250 pounds. And then I put a hose in there and added as much water as I could. So they say the max weight is about 270 pounds. I bet this is about 300 pounds. So it's really heavy and hard to move around. But if you kick it and you punch it hard, it does start to move, especially if you've got it on pavement. So when I'm working out on Bob, he does tend to slip around a little bit because I've got a hard pavement floor, but it's not that bad. He never tips over or anything like that. But I would say that he's difficult to move around on purpose. So when I want to drag him across the floor, it really takes some effort. And I always worry about cracking the base. Century Martial Arts kind of recommends tilting him and then rolling the base. But I think that's how I cracked my first base. I had, again, almost 300 pounds in there of water and sand. And I was constantly moving him and rolling him around. And eventually that hard plastic just cracked. Ideally, you don't move Bob around that much. You kind of put him in one place and you use him where he is. You maybe can move him around a little bit, but I wouldn't count on moving him that much. So let's talk about the pros and cons of Bob. First, let me say outright that this is my favorite piece of training equipment. I've got all kinds of heavy bags and water bags, all types of different punching bags. This is my go-to bag that I use the most. And I think it's because it's soft, which makes it easy on the joints. It's realistic. And I don't know, there's just something I like about working out with him. A second pro with Bob is that he's great for using angle shots. So many of the strikes that I use, whether they're palm heels that come up or hammer fists that come down or even uppercuts, those are all really difficult to practice on a regular heavy bag because it's just vertical. But you've got all these great angles with Bob, and it's very realistic, so you can practice all of those. Another pro is that you can practice eye attacks. Eye attacks are really useful in a real self-defense situation. Obviously, they're dangerous, so you only want to use it when your life is really in danger. But being able to rake the eyes like that or gouge the eyes with your thumb, those are great things to know, and you can't practice those against a real training partner. But with Bob, I find there's lots of opportunities to really jam your fingers into his eyes, or you can rake the eye with a preemptive strike and hit him over the head with a hammer fist. All these types of things I would never be able to practice on a regular heavy bag. Another pro is that you can throw a gi on him or a sweatshirt or a hoodie and dress him up so it's more realistic for a real fight. There really are times when it makes sense to grab some guy's hoodie and pull it over his head, like in hockey fights, or to grab the fabric on his arm or his lapel to control him. Those are all great things to do, and you can't do any of that with a regular heavy bag. Another one of my favorite ways to use Bob is to practice chokes, like a simple rear naked choke. Again, you can't do this with a heavy bag. You need some kind of punching dummy, and you don't always have training partners who are willing to be choked out all the time. But here you can really practice sinking that choke in so that his chin, his neck is right in the crux of your elbow, and working on getting that in and then sinking the other hand and pushing off with your chest to kind of sink that choke in. Another pro is that you can make Bob different sizes. You just grab the base and you kind of shift it, and you can lock it in at lower heights, or you can make him 6'5", or I'm 6'1", and now he's about 6'4". I could even make him a little bit taller than this. But this is great for practicing on different size opponents. It gives you a realistic sense of what it would look like and what shots make the most sense against someone like that. Another pro is that you can practice strikes to the neck. I don't do a lot of these because I find that they're actually hard to hit, but a lot of people like to practice throat shots, which you can do, or shoe toes to the neck, which you can also do. Those are supposed to be pretty effective, but I just don't practice them a ton. Maybe they'd come up in a real fight. I don't really know. And the last pro I would say is that because he's soft and he has a lot of give to him, it's very forgiving on your joints. One of the dangers of working out with a heavy bag is that you're pounding something very heavy and hard, and it really takes a toll on your elbows, and you can cause damage and injury. Bob has so much give to him that, I wear gloves, simple MMA gloves, and I'm fine. My joints are always fine. So I really like that I can train with him a lot, work out hard, and not worry too much about injuring my joints. Okay, let's talk about some cons. The first con, I think, and the biggest one, is that he's really expensive. Again, this model, the XL, goes for about $400, and that's without the arms and without the gi. That's pretty expensive, considering you can get a good heavy bag for about $150. So if I were you and you wanted to get Bob, and I recommend you do because it's a great piece of training equipment, I would just go with the base model, which is about $300, and make sure you get a lot of use out of that. If you're not going to use Bob a lot, just once in a while, you might want to just start with a basic heavy bag. And again, that's around $100, $150, and I have links to some good ones as well. The second con is that he does move around a little. Even when you fill him with as much sand and water as possible, get him up to almost 300 pounds, you start hitting him hard, you start kicking him, he will move around on a cement floor. So you've got to kind of pull him in and make those adjustments. What's great about a heavy bag on a chain is it always comes back to where it was. So you just have to be mindful of the fact that he will move around a little bit. Another con is that it takes a little bit of time to get used to this big plastic base. You can kind of run your feet into it in the beginning. If you're used to working out with a heavy bag on a chain, there's nothing on the ground. You can move in nice and close. Here you learn that you can't go in straight or you'll jam your toe into that big plastic base. So you just learn to get used to it and work around it. It's not a big deal, but I could see for some people how that might be inconvenient. A fourth con is that even though this XL version comes with that lower midsection, which is designed for knees and low kicks, It's not ideal because it's still easy to kind of hit a little low by accident and hit that hard plastic. So I find that's a little tough to go full force against bob because I'm always worried about jamming my knee on that plastic. So you can do it, you just need to be mindful of it. In summary, I would say that bob is an excellent piece of training equipment. There's a reason why over the last 10 years, this has been my go-to piece of training equipment. I just like it better than everything else. I like the fact that it's realistic. I like the fact that I can practice angles. I like the fact that it's easy on my hands and on my joints. Even, I wear gloves for this, but it still makes it really easy. And I like the fact that I can dress it up. I can buy these arms as an attachment. I can throw a gi on him to grip. Those are all things that make it more realistic than a regular heavy bag. So I hope this review helped, and let me know if you have any questions.